Hey guys, I'm here to bring you an off-meta warrior minion endgame build centered around Chober Chaber and the Dark Defiler's unique, going with the Witch and the Lich Ascendency. This build is by no means complete and it's got plenty of room left for optimization, but as of right now, it's dirt cheap. I think in fact all of the gears total together doesn't add up to one divine. And it's also got some interesting concepts that I'd like to just kind of show and share with the community. And I'm super excited to hear more feedback from the folks here on how to make it more powerful. But before maybe any more of that detailed discussion, let's first hop into this short T15-16 mapping montage and see how it works. Cheers! Alright, so that was the end of the montage. I think for this section, I'm going to maybe show you guys another just kind of a full T15 mapping clear session. I think the modifiers is kind of being flashed right now, as well as it being a irradiated map with a boss, to give you guys a sense of how both the mapping and the bossing performs. Also during this session of the mapping, I'll be giving live commentary as I play through, give you guys a sense of how comfortable everything feels. After this, I'm going to just have the kind of the build detail section shoved in at the end. All right, so enjoy. All right, let's get to it. This map is actually pretty good for this setup, to be honest. So this is definitely not like a stress test, I will say. But maybe I should say that at the end, you know, after I clear this map without dying. But you know, let's see. So yeah, at the start, first pack. You don't want to go for like a rare pack right away. Just go for some white mod pack. What you're really after are corpses. Yeah, just get that bone struck number up and bone construct number up. Sorry, and yeah, now you're just kind of chilling. So outside of that, you're really just kind of setting up earthquakes kind of around the mob and letting the bone construct and your like kind of storm mage do the rest of the work. The way that the Earthquake is, so one thing about Earthquake is, you know, there's recently a lot of kind of builds and, you know, showcases for Earthquake with like, you know, really quick, you know, explosion of jagged ground. So our build doesn't have that. The one way to think about it is our Earthquake, you gotta kind of treat it as like a fire and forget kind of a thing. You almost treat it almost kind of like a trap. And generally, you know, the weakness with the Earthquake is just, you know, because you have to wait for so long for the Earthquake to explode. The packs are not on top of the Earthquake anymore, which is, for us, not really the case because you tie them up with, like, you know, 22-hour bone constructs. So, yeah, so in that case, you know, it's really just kind of thinking about how to, you know, just kind of change your thinking a little bit and you should be good. In terms of, you know, what the utility of the Earthquake is for. And you should be okay. There we go. I am a little bit surprised. That monster is a bit tankier than I expected, actually, especially with all my bone constructs out. So, yeah, let's keep going. And I'm not sure if we'll run into this map. I think, you know, if we have a situation where I have like 2 or even 3 rares together, just because of the way I spec out my Atlas tree, that might also kind of give you guys a bit of a better sense of how this build kind of performs under duress. But again, I think, you know, one of the goals here for this kind of off-meta homebrew build is really just kind of to see, you know, go to the highest tier of mapping level available and see how we can do. And so I would argue to say that, you know, as long as you're not too boneheaded about how you're playing and, you know, not really picking like the most deadly combination of, you know, map affixes and stuff like that, I think you're relatively comfortable, right? Kind of what I'm doing here. So yeah, so Earthquake is, you know, the one thing that I just talked about. And the other thing you'll notice is, you know, for rares and stuff like that, you'll see me using Rolling Slam. Generally speaking, Rolling Slam is definitely for kind of single targets for rares, or even for kind of white mobs that might be a bit tankier, or just white mobs in the back, you know, having like those really strong CC attacks, kind of like the Val monsters have those, you know, that Priestess of the Sun. Yeah, this guy. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's a giant miss. Right. As well as kind of those like Val monsters with like lightning attacks, or that Priestess of Sun with like the solar beam. Those things are actually pretty annoying. So that's why you can also kind of go in and like, you know, kill those guys with the Rolling Slam. And one thing about Rolling Slam is that, okay, so you'll kind of notice that it's pretty tanky, right? Just kind of tank that molten orb. One thing about Rolling Slam is that when you're, you know, kind of going into the pack to kind of kill these high value targets, you really want to make sure that you have a healthy amount of minion counts, especially your bone constructs, you know, around, you know, 10 or above. And the reason is simple, because your damage output is directly related to the number of minions you have active because of your Dark Defiler scepter. So that's just kind of one more thing to be mindful of, because the worst thing that can happen is kind of go in the middle of a mob, right, trying to take down those high value targets, but you know, your damage is just not there. So you just gotta stay there longer. You know, you gotta, I don't know, do 3 or even 4 Rolling Slam just to get the job done. At that point, you're kind of, you know, you're kind of dead, right? The Recoup really helps a lot in terms of you staying alive, especially in the middle of a, you know, like a pack, but it's not a great situation to be in. So you really gotta just be a bit more mindful when you dive for those rares, or, you know, kind of back rank enemies that might, you know, do a lot of damage. You just kind of gotta be aware, like when to do so and when to pull the mobs. So that's Rolling Slam. And, you know, like one other interesting thing about Rolling Slam is that both your Rolling Slam for rares as well as your Hammer of the God, which I'll showcase later when we get to the boss, are slam skills. So in that sense, you know, both Seismic Cry and Infernal Cry helps boost up damage a little bit. So even for Rolling Slam, you know, if you really need to kind of get this target down ASAP, Seismic Cry, Infernal Cry, so you get actually 4 slam explosions, and most of the time, you know, with relatively healthy number of minions, you should be able to just kind of take it down, right? Like, if he doesn't move, there we go. Like that. Like that. So we talked about Earthquake, we talked about Rolling Slam. We can kind of also talk about bone constructs here. So you'll notice that my character is actively switching between the primary weapon set and the secondary. So the primary weapon set, you know, it's just the Chober Chaber with the Dark Defiler. Right, and that's kind of self-explanatory. We'll get to the details of how the core mechanic works in the section, in the explanation section. But in terms of the bone constructs, I am playing around with, you know, something called snapshotting. What that means is that when you make the bone constructs, it remembers all the bonuses that you have on the passive tree at the time of creation. So really, what that enables me to do is it actually kind of lets me double dip passive tree a little bit. So if you really think about it, what I can do is I can set up my secondary weapon set with a bunch of kind of minion, my secondary weapon set in terms of the passive tree, a bunch of, you know, minion survivability, minion resistances, minion damage, etc., etc. And when I make the bone construct, the bone construct again are going to get all those health and, you know, attack bonuses and stuff, speed bonuses, what have you. But then when we, you know, but then after they're created, I can switch back to the primary weapon set, which don't have those bonuses on the passive tree. But then the bone constructs don't care, right? Their stats are not going to change. So then that means that for the primary weapon tree, I can, you know, spend more points in like recoup or, you know, my main character's survivability and all of that. So this kind of, again, lets you double dip a little bit and yeah, take advantage. So this snapshot is definitely not like a thing that I found. It's kind of, you know, known, you know, and shared across other YouTube content creators as well. So as well as actually a lot of the many other concepts that I'll get into. So, you know, credits due to, you know, so I'll kind of acknowledge all of the credits in the video description as well. There is a rare. Okay, there we go. There we go. Right, so that's okay, where. That's the thing. So let me see where I'm slamming actually. There we go. The expedition I'm just gonna do off camera because I don't think this, you know, is really that big of a stress. I think, yeah. So we're gonna just slowly pass over to the boss. Let's see. So we talked about Earthquake, we talked about Rolling Slam, we talked about snapshotting, and honestly, that's kind of the crux of, you know, the build in terms of the offense that we use for mapping. So a bit more about defense, I guess, while we're at it. You'll kind of see here, I have, you know, I don't know, 2k shield and like 1.4k armor. It's really crap, right? So, and the reason, and so I essentially invested a lot into Recoup. So before this, I actually tested like a pure stacking energy shield and armor. You feel like a wet paper towel in these maps. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's really undertuned. GG really needs to fix it. So in the meantime, you know, to kind of ensure a reasonable amount of survivability, that's why I'll also mention this in the mobalytics and all that. Choosing a form of regen is super important. It could be life regen, or it could be recoup. So life regen has some advantages, but I'll focus on recoup here because this is what I'm doing. You will need the Sacrosanctum armor here. It essentially lets you double the recoup. What it's saying is that whatever recoup you have for life, it also applies to energy shield. And that's why you see my energy shield going back up, like down, up, and down, up. And this actually works in surprising synergy with the Lich Ascendency, because Lich Ascendency, the defensive side of the tree, has that 10% damage taken bypasses energy shield goes to life. So essentially when you take damage, your energy shield and life is going down at the same time. But then because of Sacrosanctum, you're getting your recoup back from life and energy shield also at the same time. So this is kind of, you know, an interesting interaction in that sense. Really helps you, you know, double dip survivability. Okay, you know, some other nuances in the build, but maybe we'll talk about it in the end. We're heading up to the boss now. You know, the bone constructs are nice, but it's not going to last throughout the entire boss. So really, you know, your bonus damage is going to have to come from, you know, the number of persistent minions that you have. But let me try to get some damage. Oh, that's okay, right? Like a little bit of damage before the bone constructs all died. And I think actually this is one of the bosses that actually spawns corpses for us later, which is nice. Oh, okay. I am kind of face tanking this with the oh nice, yeah. This is when the thing spawns. Okay. All right, let me. Oh. All right. Okay, there we go. There we go. So you want to stun the boss ASAP. There we go. Seismic, Infernal, Hammer of Gods. There we go. Did I miss? I think I might have missed. Okay. Sorry, that's a bit of a whiff. I'll put some more montages in. Usually it's about 1 million damage. Sorry, that's just a whiff. So definitely, you know, not like super insane in terms of damage, but respectable, right? And you also kind of see the combat loop now. You just really want to try to stun the boss. Oh, okay, tank that. That was close. Really try to just stun the boss as quickly as you can, and then you go for your combo, which is preferably armor break first, which I forgot to do. But armor break, Seismic Cry, Infernal Cry, double Hammer of the Gods. That will take you over 1 million in damage, which is okay, right? Given how much you have to work for it, but yeah. So yeah, there it is. The current state of the Chober Chaber homebrew Lich build showcase. Obviously a lot more details I still haven't touched on, so yeah, let's get to the build explanation section. All right, so now we're in the kind of the build details section of the video. So I will try to give details wherever is needed, but because this is still kind of a build in progress, I'm gonna, you know, maybe some of the finer things I'm just gonna kind of skip over and maybe more, you know, get kind of the broader strokes across, because, you know, this is definitely still something that I'm still refining, even from footages to footages. So with that out of the way, I think the overview, you know, you probably already kind of got a sense, you know, during looking at the showcase, is it's actually 3 aspects that's kind of really enabling this build. Obviously, first is the Chober Chaber, but the second thing would actually be the Giant's Blood Keystone, and the third thing is the Dark Defiler Scepter. So all 3 of them kind of makes up a core aspect of this build to kind of make it what it is right now. So before we kind of dive into the skill gems or, you know, passives or all of that, you know, just again, kind of like a quick recap, right? Chober Chaber, this is essentially a 2-handed mace that is, you know, about 300 DPS. It's really bad for T15 in terms of base damage, but it does give you 50 spirit, and it does say increases and reductions to minion damage also affect you as one of the unique affixes. So just kind of a note here, this only refers to 2 sources in which it's relevant. First is nodes on the passives in the north and northwest, where it says things like this one, Power of the Dead, minions deal 15% increased damage, as well as kind of this one right here, Bringer of Order, 25% increased damage. These are the nodes that Chober Chaber will also kind of take those and apply to you. Things that affect minion attack speed or resistances or life or things like that does not carry over. The second source in which, you know, Chober Chaber can take advantage of are actually minion increased damages from jewels. So Sapphire Jewels specifically, we have things like minion deal 15% increased damage. Those will also apply to you. So as far as I know, those are the only 2 sources in which, you know, the Chober Chaber affix can help you in terms of increasing the damage. So when you look at Chober Chaber, right, and what I just mentioned, it's very clear that it wants you to play some kind of a warrior minion archetype, and that's what we're trying to enable. But the issue is, if you only use this, it ties up both of your hands, and you're never going to be able to do as much damage as you can with just like a straight up warrior build, unless you invest a lot. And you're also not going to be able to do as well as a straight up pure minion build, just because you don't have, you know, you don't have a scepter slot, which gives you plus levels to minion, as well as a lot of the other affixes that a scepter can roll to benefit your minions. So that's why, you know, this is only, Chober Chaber is only 1/3 of the core build here. The second third is definitely the Giant's Blood Keystone passive here. Quick shout out to off-meta Michael. I think he also has a Chober Chaber build that also kind of takes advantage of this key concept, but I think he doesn't use the Dark Defiler Scepter. That's kind of where we differ, but this is where I kind of also took inspiration from when I was, you know, trying to think of the best way to use or run Chober Chaber. So Giant's Blood, right? I think for those maybe who are not too familiar, you can now wield two-handed axes, maces, and sword in one hand. That means that you open up your free hand. It triples the requirement of the martial weapon. So, you know, you will. So if you go back and look at the Chober Chaber, that does mean that to wield this, you'll need 228 strength and 300. And so, some challenges in there to overcome, but we'll get to it when we get to the gearing. You know, the suffixes can essentially help you clear that hurdle. But again, you know, with the pro side of Giant's Blood, you open up your offhand, and now comes the last 1/3 of the key, you know, build synergy, which is the Dark Defiler Scepter. So on the surface, this is also kind of a pretty trash, unique scepter, actually similar to the Chober Chaber. But the two things that it's got going for it is, first, it gives you, it's a rattling scepter, so you can summon a skeletal warrior minion, and those minions generally you can get 2 for free. And you'll see that for us, we actually care about stacking the number of minions, just because of this last affix, which says gain 5% of damage as chaos damage per undead minion. You'll find that, you know, the build here is really trying to maximize the number of minions on screen, and when you have everything going in a mapping scenario, you will have more than 30 minions running around. So that's immediately, you know, an extra 150% of damage. This is not like increased damage, right? It's just extra, which is obviously really powerful. So this is essentially what I'm running right now to kind of help me, you know, magnify my damage a little bit to kind of compensate for the poor base damage that Chober Chaber is going with. So that's kind of the overview essentially of the core aspects of the build that I have so far. Again, definitely looking for inputs, or, you know, maybe some other way of kind of playing the Chober Chaber build essentially. But again, with this current kind of trifecta of Chober Chaber, Giant's Blood, and the Dark Defiler Scepter, then everything kind of falls into place and builds around that, if that makes sense. So, you know, briefly in the past, let's go to the gyms first. I'm gonna kind of throw up an overlay right now on table in terms of what skill goes into which set of weapon set. This build does leverage fully, as much as we can actually, the primary weapon set, as well as the secondary weapon set, or the weapon swapping tech. I think in the showcase itself, I already kind of talked mostly about, you know, what each of the skills are for, and, you know, even kind of the combat rotation. Again, I'll also have that on the overlay here, so I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm just going to kind of quickly go over each of the skills and, you know, kind of let you know what support I'm running, and, you know, what is necessary or what can be further improved. So Earthquake is kind of your CC skill that you'll need for mapping. Rage is pretty important. I definitely go with this one. Magnified Effect and Reach are both important for just, you know, more area of effect. Fast Forward is a quality of life. It just kind of makes the jagged ground explosion happen a little bit earlier, so it kind of just makes everything feel nicer, but this is definitely more of a nice to have. One thing about Reach, the accuracy penalty, we don't care, because we have a Resolute Technique. You'll see them when we get to the passive tree. Rolling Slam, I have a 5 link, but, you know, you can probably honestly get rid of either Heavy Swing, probably, yeah, the last one here, if you don't have that much. Yeah, if you don't have a 5 link. But I'm running with Heavy Swing, Martial Temple, Unyielding. This one, it goes in synergy with the Recoup setup that I'm running with right now. And this just kind of further makes you recoup more damage as you're going through this Rolling Slam, because it is kind of a slow attack animation, especially if you're doing it in kind of a mapping scenario with a bunch of mobs on you. Fist of War is actually pretty good, and that's why I say, you know, maybe you prioritize this one over Heavy Swing. The reason is just because you're not spamming Rolling Slam. You're using Rolling Slam kind of sparingly when you're not doing Earthquake or on Earth. So yeah, that's why, you know, this one has a 35% more damage, 30% more damage, but as well as 20% more area of effect. So that's why I prefer this. Last one is Close Combat. You should be up in, you know, monsters' faces when you do this. So this should, in most cases, straight up a 25% more, you know, damage modifier. Seismic Cry, Corrupting Cry and Overpower are both honestly placeholders. I don't know of a better one to put. Dazing Cry is pretty important, just as, you know, if you use Seismic Cry as a starting skill during bossing to get him to build up stun bar a little bit faster. Infernal Cry, everything's pretty important, but you know, also pretty standard. Raging Cry, you know, build up rage. Tireless, just that you can, you know, have more empowerment, premeditation, more damage. Inspiration, less cost. This kind of helps you keep your mana up, because you're going to need it up to ensure that you have your Unholy Might up as long as you can. Hammer of the Gods, also pretty straightforward. We just want damage, damage, and damage. Rage Forge, concentrated effect, because you're using this for single damage. Heft, and Fire Infusion. You could make a, you know, I'll probably, you know, swap Heft with Heavy Swing here if you're not running Heavy Swing here, because it's more, you know, a benefit in terms of attack damage. But again, that's pretty straightforward. One thing I'm hoping to have happen in point 0.3 is maybe GGG gives us, you know, more options for chaos damage buff for builds that runs attack, right, rather than spells, because right now I think the only two kind of support gems that gives extra chaos is Extraction, which lets you pay a life penalty, but it also only applies to spell. The other one is Chaos Infusion, but that actually cuts out all other sources of damage, kind of like Brutality, except for Chaos. So it really limits the build flexibility there. So you know, hopefully we get something interesting here or new in point 0.3, and we can kind of slot this in to replace Fire Infusion. On Earth, again, you know, for the table that you have on the right, it goes into your secondary weapon set, and pretty straightforward. It's really, you treat it more as a minion skill, even though like versus like a damage spell skill, right? So you want +1 level, persistence, so you know your minions stay a little bit longer. Muster, again, more damage for a minion. Corpse Conservation just lets you summon more minion with the same number of corpses. Muster, by the way, would be actually a 21% more damage, because it counts itself as well as the Storm Mage and your Rattling Scepter, skeletal soldiers. For Skeleton Storm Mage, I'm prioritizing, so I think this is my minion of choice for the persistent minion. You could make a case for Frost Mage, but Storm Mage shocks, so that's again another straight up 20% extra damage. So for this one, we're doing Conduction for more shock chance, Minion Mastery, Breeding Frenzy, and Last Gasp, just to kind of have your minion uptime a little bit more, because keeping in mind the more minions you have at any point in time, the more damage that you also do as a single character. Armor Breaker, Demolishers is the key one. This pin is really more of a, you know, like a placeholder. I don't know what else to put here. I was just kind of playing with different things. Last thing is the aura that I'm running is only Overwhelming Presence with Clarity for mana regen. You could maybe make an argument to swap Overwhelming Presence for Blasphemy with maybe Enfeeble, or the Curse that lowers physical resistance. I think it kind of depends on what you want to go with, and also how much spare you're stacking. I think right now my gears are not that great, so I'm kind of low on Spirit. That's why I decided to just go with 30 Spirit costs, and this again helps me build up stun a little bit in the bossing scenario. But again, lets me clear, you know, a maximum of over 30 minions just for more damage bonuses. So that is kind of the skill set, and we can kind of quickly go into the passive a little bit. And again, you know, I'm gonna have this on Mobalytics and POB, so you know, if you're interested in the details, feel free. But again, I'm just gonna go over the broad strokes here, because this is definitely not optimized. You start on the witch side, and I think generally speaking, you just want to path up to the outermost ring, north up, as quickly as you can. Once you get on the highway, path all the way down. You're there to take Giant's Blood, right? And that's a must-have for the way that this build works, that we talked about before. So with that, then the next thing you definitely want to grab would just be Resolute Technique. And by the way, this is probably not how you want to do when you're leveling. We can talk about leveling at the very end. You know, I really recommend maybe, you know, leveling, you just run your typical essence drain kind of setup until you get enough spirit points to kind of a skill passive points to kind of pivot over to this skeletal structure that you see here. But with Giant's Blood and Resolute Technique taken, and by the way, this is I think very necessary for maces. Your accuracy is always 100%. You're never going to miss. You can't do crit, but we're not doing a crit build anyways. And also, you don't have to stack accuracy anywhere else, which is actually a super convenient, great quality of life keystone. With that out of the way, then you want to take damages. I think your passives needs to be covering a few different areas of your build. So for damage, where we're really only focused on, even though I understand that the mace side has some great damage nodes, like Crushing Verdict or Singular Purposes and stuff like that. We're not doing that yet. I think we're just prioritizing all the minion deal increased damage nodes that it's relevant for Chober Chaber. So this cluster here with the Holy Protector, Silent Guardian, Bringer of Order, I think the Future Templar must take cluster. You take all of this. Some of the stuff up here for the minion, all of this minion deals 12% damage. You take this cluster and the Lord of Horror Reservation, just so that you can again stack more persistent minions. And you take a few of these nodes as well for increased damage, and that's all you're taking for damage, honestly. Outside of that, for defense, you want to take things that benefit Energy Shield as well as Recoup. So for Energy Shield, honestly, pretty straightforward. You're taking a few here. Honestly, I think once I level up a little bit more, I'm level 89 right now. These can probably go down here for this cluster of extra Energy Shield into melding. Outside of that, you want to path down to the heavy buffer area here to take this one. The 5% damage bypass, taking bypass Energy Shield is actually very important for our Recoup synergy that we're going to talk about in a minute. And outside of that, for defense, again, you want to take the Recoup node. So you want to take the Recoup cluster up here. Hot Flesh, Loose Flesh, these are actually really good Recoup nodes. You want to take this one right here, Infuse Flesh. Again, it's pretty close, and the extra life is good, as well as again, just the 8% damage taken. This also the last Recoup cluster here, Pliable Flesh, is almost in must-have if you want to take Recoup. We're not running Chronomancer, so we're not getting so there's no way for us to cut our Recoup time down for 8 seconds to 4. So the next best thing is this one, which cuts our Recoup time down from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. For those of you who are not familiar, Recoup just means that all damage that you take is kind of given back to you over 8 seconds, and it stacks, right, for every instance of damage taken. If you do the math, you actually find that if you recover everything within 6 seconds instead of 8 seconds, your regeneration is actually an increase of about 33%. So this is actually huge in terms of just getting the damage, getting the health back to you as you take damage, and really bolsters your survivability. So outside of the offense and the key defense categories that I talked about, really the rest is really kind of trying to stack attributes that we talked about here. Ingenuity, because you need to satisfy your requirement to wield the Chober Chaber with Giant's Blood, as well as the rest of the points. Your primary weapon set points, you can kind of play around and allocate a little bit more on the minion side. Pick up a few more minion revive, just so that it gets it just gives you better minion uptime. While your secondary weapon set here is, again, kind of the snapshot tech that I talked about during the showcase video, showcase part of the video. So in this case, I take a bit more on the minion survivability, as well as resistance and stuff, and that's just to kind of ensure that the bone constructs are beefier, because they're kind of on the front line trying to tank everything. One other thing that I also took here is this one, increased skill duration. Again, this plus persistence, just make sure that your bone construct uptime is a little bit better. So that's, again, a quality of life. So that's kind of the high level and the ideas behind the passive tree. It's also pretty straightforward, but hopefully that kind of covers the key aspects. And right into that, we can talk about the ascendancies a little bit more. I think this is kind of the part that's kind of interesting. You can definitely make Chober Chaber work with a warrior archetype. I just went with a witch just because I think there's maybe more opportunities for interesting build in that respect. So I actually tried between Infernalist and Lich, and I think I went with Lich just because the damage uptime is a little bit more reliable. The Infernalist, I think you can definitely build into kind of like a Ignite DOT kind of a thing to kind of further boost your damage. But the extra 50% damage you get when your Infernal Flame is high is a little jank because you're not casting spells to keep it up all the time. Versus here, as long on the Lich side of things, as long as you have high mana, you straight up just get Unholy Might, right? Which is 30%. It's a little bit less, but I haven't finished all my labs yet or all my Ascendency, so probably in the next set I'll take Black and Hard, and I have about 1700 mana. So if you do the math, it's also about a total of like about 50% extra chaos damage, so similar to what you get on an Infernalist. So again, coming back to Lich, and I think that's part of the reason, right? Like the damage aspect of Lich is it's just easier to achieve. The mana degen doesn't really matter as much because you're stacking a lot of strength anyway, so that kind of makes your warrior hybrid. What you can do is, even though you have mana degen here, when you take the node on the right side, Soulless Form, your mana regen is now tied to your life. And again, because you're stacking life with strength, you're stacking strength, you have more life. In most cases, this kind of really solves your mana regen problem with maybe a little bit of clarity that we just talked about in this skill gem section that frees up all the points. You're going to be bottlenecked by the number of passive nodes you have anyway, passive points you have anyway, so you don't need to invest in mana regen anywhere else. And the last thing here is the Phylactery. It's actually pretty useful just because, remember, we really want to stack damage against on both minions and your character. And the only two sources either nodes on the tree or the Sapphire. So this, I got another gem here that's 15% increased damage, doubles that 30%. Just kind of an easy source, essentially, of more damage. One thing, one other thing, a synergy I do want to spend a little bit more time to talk about is essentially Soulless Form, right? Coming back to here, 10% of damage taken bypasses Energy Shield. This one combined with, Heavy Buffer. For those of you, maybe for those of you who already play Lich, you already know, but if you don't, this means that at any point in time when you get damage, 15% of damage gets taken out from your life instead, even when you have Energy Shield. And this is uniquely synergistic because you'll see when we get to the gearing section, but we are running a unique armor that lets us recoup Energy Shield as well as the life recoup that we get just standard. So what that means is when you take damage that's spread across your Energy Shield and your life, you're recouping both life and Energy Shield. So that actually kind of lets you fully take advantage of kind of the Energy Shield also recoup mechanic from the unique armor, essentially. And also another upside, actually, of recouping applied to Energy Shield is that you don't have to wait for Energy Shield to recharge naturally. So all of the nodes like faster start of Energy Shield recharge, you don't need it because it's just going to be recouping anyways. And also, one last thing is that because of this, it actually is really helpful to manage the downside of Crystal and Phylactery. So if you look at this node right here, you actually have a downside here which says 50% more mana cost of skills if you have no Energy Shield. So if you don't have recoup for Energy Shield, you're going to be walking around most of the time, in combat. Once your Energy Shield is depleted, your life is exposed and everything's more expensive. But because if you're recouping Energy Shield, it's always growing back, and as long as you have some Energy Shield, you don't have this downside. Which again is, which is just some additional synergy with the Lich Ascendancy. So again, I'm doing broad strokes here for the skill gems, the passive, and the Ascendancy. just because I think there's a lot more improvement that we can be made for this build, but hopefully that gives you guys a general idea. So maybe going back to the gearing a little bit, you know, as a kind of a final part of the build, like what we talked about before, the cost of the gears are not that expensive. I'm gonna have like an approximate table. I'm gonna put on the left side of the overlay here to kind of add up all the costs here. Chober Chaber, Dark Defiler, we already talked about. Sacrosanctum is the unique that I keep referring back to when I talk about Recoup previously. So this armor here, armor energy shield, respectable. You know, it gives you some. It's not that much, but it's good enough. The key here is it actually helps with chaos resistance, which is great because any build with energy shield, when you take chaos damage, it doubles. It's double damage taken from energy shield, so resistance for chaos is really valuable for us. But the thing here, and 6% damage taken recoup as life, I think you can definitely roll higher. Again, it just depends on you know, your budget, right? But the key affix here is the last one. Damage taken recouped as life is also recouped as energy shield. So this is kind of what ties the recoup mechanic all together for us, where your energy shield always coming back up along with your health. And a little bit of an aside, but I think this is a must-have if you're running energy shield and armor. Just hybrid energy shield and armor, I try actually stacking those just by itself. I got around 3k energy shield and 8k armor. I felt like a wet paper towel. Like, it's not good. I think GGG needs to fix that. So taking a recovery option is must-have here. You could make an argument for life regen, but it's got its own problems, and also, you know, I think it doesn't have some of the synergies that I talked about previously in terms of recoup and the Lich Ascendency and bypassing damage. So this is the third piece of unique that kind of wraps everything together. If we look at the rest of the gear, it's pretty straightforward. And these, you know, you look at my helm, you know, my rings. I'm really kind of prioritizing suffix over prefix here, mostly just to stack up all the resistances, cap them, as well as trying to cap as much chaos damage as I can. Sorry, chaos resistance as I can, just because, again, we're particularly vulnerable to chaos resistance. One thing I also do want to call out is on your amulet, you really want to make sure that you have this suffix here, percent of damage taken recoup as life. You get a T1, you can get up to 24%, which is insane. That's literally, I think, 8 passive points, because like just a good old regular, you know, passive node for recoup is only like 3% or something. So you definitely need this. Outside of that, obviously you want to kind of prioritize, you know, as much as you can in terms of energy shield and energy shield and armor. I will say one thing is that, you know, if you ask me, should I just get pure energy shield gears or energy shield and armor gears? It depends on what you can find in trade, to be honest. The price actually fluctuates a lot. So, because we're prioritizing the suffix here, and you'll find that, you know, same kind of suffix you need for a hybrid armor versus just a armor with only energy shield or armor with only armor. It's very different, so you kind of really go for whatever is cheaper here. Outside of that, I think, again, everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Oh, and also in the suffix, you know, in addition to, all the resistances, obviously you want to stack attributes, strength, and intelligence. Just kind of to go back to what we were talking about before, to make sure that you can satisfy the Chober Chaber requirement. And this actually, you know, means that you don't have to build around this in any other way. You don't have to, you know, go for hulking form, which kind of restricts the ascendancy you take, or like the Jinla ascendancy again, right, to overcome this requirement. So just stacking the suffix, you know, that's all. One last thing is, I think for this build, the next thing I'm really working on is trying to get rid of this helm. I need this helm here mostly for both chaos resistance as well as the intelligence bonus that it gives me. But once I can kind of get, and you'll see right here that I'm barely kind of capping everything. I mean, I'm over capped a little bit in all of it, but Chaos I'm still missing a little bit, and so probably I can honestly fix it with a Soul Core. But regardless, once I have the benefits there, I really want to replace this with Aziri. This Aziri Disdain, I think it's. This again is kind of like maybe like a stock standard unique that Lich Ascendency folks run, but again, this gives me another 10% bypass, damage taken bypass energy shield, which again just lets us link a little bit stronger into the energy shield recoup mechanic. And lastly, this actually gives you a ton more energy shield. So yeah, so that's kind of, again, like zooming back out, that kind of gives you a sense maybe overall of what the build is, what are the key things to look out for, and maybe what are some of the immediate things that we kind of want to do to make this a little bit better. Alright guys, so that kind of covers everything. So before we get into the conclusion, just a few quick corrections. First is, in terms of the actual cost of all of the gears and stuff like that, I did the math, and I think it's about a bit over 400 exalts. If I look at the exchange rate, I think it's right now it's about 1 div to 300 exalt. So I guess technically speaking, the overall build, if you just want to buy everything straight up, does cost a little bit more than 1 exalt. But I think overall my stance is the same, that everything's still very much dirt cheap, and I assume that at least 1 or 2 pieces of the yellow gear you should be able to come across something decent enough to kind of carry you over into the end game that you just have on, and that would just really save a lot in terms of the gears. Second real quick thing is, I think earlier in the montage I mentioned, or the showcase, I mentioned about 1 million for Hammer of God double damage with the Seismic Cry and Infernal Cry. I think that might be the most ideal, because I went back and checked some footages and some of the other mapping bosses. I think more realistically, you can only be doing about maybe 500 to 600 K, or maybe 700 to 800 K if you've already armor broken the boss before. So just another minor correction there. I think you're not hitting 1 mil quite yet. But again, it doesn't really change anything about the build or how it works or functions. The very last thing in terms of one thing that I forgot to mention earlier in the gearing section is actually my secondary weapon set, which is here that I'm showing on the screen. As a quick reminder, the secondary weapon set we're using as a snapshot tech for bone construct. So whatever you have on your main hand, or if you even want to have a shield, I think that's totally fine. And there's probably some possibility of optimization there, so let me know what you guys think. But you just really want to get a scepter with some plus levels to minion skills. If you look at this one, I got this one off of a trade site, like super cheap. I think, again, the cost is in the gearing section, but this is really the key. And whatever you have the plus levels here, it gets applied to the unearthed minions. And even if you switch back to your primary weapon set, it stays in terms of the bonuses for the bone construct minions. So yeah, you just want to, again, make sure that you have something like this for your secondary weapon set for the scepter. All right, so I think with the corrections out of the way, finally, I think you've not figured it out by this point. This is my first ever YouTube video. I've been playing video games for a long time, ARPG as well, D2, D3. I think I spent at least about 500 hours in Diablo 3, just playing the various classes, POE1 and now POE2. I'm very much a dad gamer. I've very limited time to play on a daily basis. So to me, when I was putting this together, I really wanted to make something that's accessible as possible for the other dad gamers of POE2, as well as at the same time try to make it interesting, right? And not another like really on meta build. So yeah, I think this is the first build that I kind of came up with that I think is kind of at least worth sharing with the community. So hopefully other fellow dad gamers out there, hope you've taken something away from this. And also, for a much more hardcore POE2 fan base out there, I'm super excited to see what you guys can kind of do to take this and elevate this by like 10x or 100x. I think personally for me going forward, this has been honestly, I think, a pretty fun experience making this video. So, you know, once 0.3 comes around and, you know, if something happens or something changes in terms of making that can benefit this build, I think I'll definitely go back and revisit and make an update. As well as, or, you know, if there's some other chance shard tier or trash tier unique that kind of catches my attention that I find interesting and I can kind of put like a cheap but viable build around, I'll definitely kind of, you know, share that with you guys as well. If, you know, there's anything else you'd like to see in the comments, any questions you have on this one, or just, you know, any thoughts you want to share with me, just throw it down there. You know, I'll get to you guys and definitely, you know, kind of share what I've learned or share what I'm thinking. So if you already made it this far, I really appreciate, you know, all of your time and attention, and hopefully you've taken something interesting out of this. Until next time, stay safe, and yeah, cheers. Alright guys, this is just kind of an addendum. I just want to kind of show some testing that I did to kind of double check that Dark Defiler indeed works with both our skeletal minions as well as our bone construct from on Earth. The reason is that it does say that, you know, if you look at the last line here, gain 5% of damage as chaos damage per undead minion. The undead part is honestly very hard to check with the in-game tooltip, so the best way is just to check your damage number, see if it goes up or down. So first thing is, let's go here. As you can see, I don't have any minion active right now. You can look at my Mace Strike is, you know, about 7.4k. If I add a Skeletal Warrior, see how it goes up? And it goes back down. So you'll see that this works with Skeletal Warrior, and, you know, just to, you know, double confirm, right? If I don't have this on, if I don't have Dark Defiler on, and I put in Skeletal Mage, for example, when I go add a few more, the damage number is still 7,444, right? So you know that the increase in bonus does come from the Dark Defiler, and that it works with skeletal minions, which is great. Put this back up. By the way, I think sometime here, meat shield somewhere. I actually don't know where. Oh, right. Okay, so that works. Second thing is we want to check if it works with your bone construct. So I'm gonna go to my weapon set 2 here. Again, you'll see that power siphon DPS 391, right? So here, okay. So I have a corpse right here in front of me, and if I do unearth, so you'll see that this damage actually goes up a little bit. It doesn't affect power siphon because it's off of my. Actually, don't know why it doesn't affect power siphon. Interesting enough, but it does raise my Mace Strike DPS. And if you wait for the bone construct to die, it hard out. Lasts way too long, and it goes back down 7,444, right? So this kind of proves 7,731, right? So this actually kind of shows that it, the Dark Defiler bonuses work with both bone construct and the persistent minions. So I put this together, for example. Get rid of the tooltip here. Right, so I'm making a lot of corpses here. Make strike. So this is the rage bonus, right? So I'm gonna wait for the rage to run out. We're back to 7,444, and I raise a bunch of skeletal minions, right? And I go back. Right, 9.4 instead of 7.4. So again, that's about like 7 extra, maybe around 35% extra. So yeah, everything's working as intended. Even though, you know, it's very hard to check, but I think for now, bone constructs are considered undead minion, which satisfies the bonus for your Dark Defiler.